So today's session officially is about architecting cross-platform solutions with MvvmCross, but I couldn't do a session without dinosaurs. So actually, today's session is really all about keep calm, and in the spirit of today, just evolve. So let's just talk briefly about what evolution I'm talking about. So MVC was kind of late 1970s. MVC was invented as a pattern. It came out of Xerox. Everything comes out of Xerox. And I think I first came across it in sort of 1990s as Model Pane Dispatcher. And MVC is all about having a model, which you can't see on some of these slides. Sorry, it's AV setup. And the model is where all your background stuff, your services go, your data goes, your calculations goes. And then it's all about having a view. And the view is where you have your UI controls, and you have your display that's on the screen. Perhaps it's also about a display that's an audio display, or perhaps it's a Google Glass display in the future. And linking those two together, you have a controller. And the controller, is the thing that does the glue in the MVC pattern. And it tends to have a pretty good, deep knowledge of what's in the view. So it tends to have, real carnal knowledge about what the UI controls are. It tends to have real deep knowledge about what events they can fire. And that's the way it's wired together. And MVC is obviously really a widely successful pattern. It's hugely successful in terms of being ASP.NET MVC, in terms of being MVC in JavaScript for Google Maps, and in terms of UI view controllers and even activities in Android. So a lot of respect for MVC. And these slides as well, sorry, I kind of stole these pictures from Jeremy Lickness, so thank you. But it's time to evolve. And sort of in the middle of the 2000s, MvvM came along, particularly from Microsoft, but also from ThoughtWorks as well. And MvvM took the same model, and it took the same sort of view, but instead of having the controller in the middle, what it tried to do was it tried to digitize that view, and so that the view was kind of a digital representation of what was on the screen. And what you tried to do is you tried to build it down into a set of properties. So you take your view, and you can see you've got a hill. You can see you've got a list of fields, perhaps. You can see you've got a list of trees. And perhaps you've got some actions, like going for a walk through this lovely view. And, pulling that together in the framework was a data binder of some description. And, traditionally in MvvM, that data binder has almost always been XAML and has been the engine within Windows. But, that was middle of 2000s, and really it hasn't evolved much since then. So what I'm trying to talk about today, and what we're really working towards at the moment, is an evolution again towards model view cross-platform. The X isn't for Xamarin, sorry for those of you who thought it might be. But it's an evolution towards model view on more and more platforms and in more new ways. So again, what you have in model view cross-platform is you have the model. Again, you have the view, but we're going cross-platform. So we don't want just one view, we want multiple views. And these are landscapes, the snowy one and a Martian one or whatever, and you can kind of pick out some of the same features, not all of them, but you can pick out some of them. And you can see that you can probably map those to a similar type of view model each time. So you can map them to something that has a hill, perhaps it has a list of field, or perhaps they're Martian mushrooms or something. You can have a list of trees, and you can still go for a walk through these environments. And what you then need is on each platform, you'll need a separate data binder. Yeah? And that's what the platform should provide for you, whether you're on Windows or iOS, or you're on Google TV or something in the future, or the Oya box or something. And MvvmCross is just one implementation of this. Yeah? So MVX and going model view model across multiple platforms isn't tied to MvvmCross. I'm sure we'll see lots more. There are frameworks coming out, things like reactive UI. There are more frameworks posted on the forums almost every day. So it's really worth just considering how you can do this. But MvvmCross, which I'm talking about today, is one particular implementation. And we're aiming at kind of these modern mobile platforms. So we're aiming at things like Windows Phone, at Windows RT, at iPhone and Android, both in tablet and in phone forms. And MvvmCross, what it does as a platform is it provides all sorts of things like data binding, like a plug-in system, like common things that you need for trace, etc. And it always provides not just single fields, but collections and things, and anything you might need when you're building your line of business apps or whatever apps you're running. And what we're going to look at in code is what we try to do is everything that was on the right-hand side, so all of your view models and also all of your models, we will try and put into portable code wherever we can so that it's shared across platforms. And then what we'll do is for each platform, we will build a separate UI. Now, this can seem a bit wasteful. It can seem a bit over the top to build a UI for each platform. But it's what your users demand. It's what they want. They want that richness on their phone. They want it looking like their phone. And so, you can argue with your users if you want to, but then there'll be somebody else's users. So that's why you're really trying to do this. So just moving forwards, I think it's time to come out of animations. And really, it's time to get into some code. So if we fire up Visual Studio, and hopefully I can fire it up, I'd just like to talk you through the process, really, with MvvmCross about how we build a simple app. And so what I'll do is I'll try and run through this. It depends how much time I fill in talking. But we always tend to start, I can't see my mouse on the screen, sorry. We always tend to start just by creating a core, so creating that portable class library that you saw on the slide before. And so what we always go is we go to Windows, and we find portable class library, and we type the name of it, which is going to be evolved demo, I'll call it. And what we'll do is, because it's the core, we'll actually call the project.core, and we'll call the solution evolved demo. And I'll just create that in a new place. So we'll fire this up, and what you'll soon get is you'll get this dialog. And I don't know if you can see that on the screens very easily, but it gives you the choice of what you'd like to target. Now, by default, you won't get Mono for Android or Xamarin.Android on your list, and you won't get MonoTouch or Xamarin.iOS on there. But you can just add it to a small XML file to add this support into your framework, and then you'll get these. So what we're going to do is we're going to add Mono for Android and MonoTouch, and we're going to target Windows Phone Mango and higher. And that just allows us to create our portable class library. And Visual Studio will go off and do its thing, hopefully. And you'll see that it's just a normal class library, and it's got a class 1. And what we'll do is we'll delete the class 1 because nobody wants it. So we've got an empty class library, and what we want to do is we want to turn it into that core project that's going to have some services and some view models. So we go as Visual Studio developers to NuGet, and I probably haven't got a network, so I'll have to use local. And we take a look, and there are all sorts of MvvmCross packages now on NuGet. You do have to be using the latest NuGet, so it's coming out at the end of this month, the 2.5, but you can get it off the CI build. And what you can do is you can just choose in here, and there'll be a starter pack. And you can choose the starter pack, install it, and Visual Studio will download it, put it into your framework. And what you'll get is you'll get a slightly modified project. So it's got a to-do folder. It's just got some text in there. We don't need to worry about that today because I know what I'm doing. It's added some references, so I can show you those very quickly. So it's added a few assemblies, just so you can use MvvmCross. And it's added a ViewModels folder, and it's added an app file. So let's just quickly take a look at those. The app file, all of these are quite small, so it's not too bad. The app file, within it just has this initialize method. And the initialize method has a strange block of code at the top, which is this creatable types.ending with service. If you're not familiar with IOC and with the way patterns work for that, then I think Greg Shackles has a talk later today. It's well worth going to. But what this is doing is it's just setting up kind of a singleton service within our application, which means that if we declare any classes and interfaces within this assembly, which end in service, then they'll get registered and we can find them later. And then the second line there is just saying, when we start, please fire off the first view model and show it. So that's just, boilerplate code, but it's very simple. And what I'll do is I'll just fix up the namespace, so it's called evolved demo. And then in view models, what we'll see is we've got a very simple view model. And you can see there's nothing to it at the moment. It's the first view model. It's got a public property. I'm kind of assuming most of you guys already know about Mvvm a bit. If you don't, I'm sure you'll catch up, and you're all brilliant engineers, so it'll be fine. So again, I'll just fix up the namespace. And what I'll do is let's make it a bit more interesting than having a hello field. Let's just add a property. And we will call this property name. And so now we've got something that raises a property changed when it fires, and it's called name, and that's a view model. Yeah? So hopefully you're all okay with that. Hopefully we can build this project. And that's our core. It's not very exciting at the moment. We'll make it a bit more exciting as we go through the day. So what we want to do is add a UI, and we're here at a Xamarin conference. So let's add a Monodroid UI to the front of it. A Xamarin.Android UI to the front of it. And so we will do evolve demo. .android is the name. And we'll go off and run it. and we'll get this new project within our solution. So you can see it here, and hopefully it's all right to you. You know, this is just a standard project. There's nothing special going on here at the moment. But what we're going to do is we're going to add a reference to our core. So that shouldn't surprise you at all. So you can reference that app, and you can reference that view model. And then what we'll do is we'll add the same NuGet package, that starter thing, to the solution, to this project. So we install it. Again, it goes off. And this time it's going to install a slightly separate, different list. You can see there's quite a few more projects there now, and some of them end in .droid. Hopefully you can see that. So we have now got a lot more functionality added to this client project. And what we can do is we can just take a look through, and you can see there's still our activity. We'll get rid of that because that was left over from before. But we have now a splash screen added. We have now a setup screen added. And we have kind of these views added. And there's just one view in there called first view. And that's what we'll be using to actually write our UI. So let me fix up some namespaces again. It doesn't do that by default at the moment. So this is evolved demo.droid. I think it might be .android, but it'll be fine. And so the splash screen is just going to sit there and just be displayed while we boot up. So there's nothing exciting with that one. And the setup, so the setup is a bit like the app was, but it's for the UI. And you can see all it's really doing here is it's got a constructor, just passes down to the base, and it's got something that says, when you start, please create an app. Yeah, so that app is what's going to be in our core project. So we'll change that over. And we'll change this one as well, so it's evolved demo. And I hope, as you're following through, it's live coding, just so you can experience how long it takes to put one of these things together. I hope you're getting the feel for how this corresponds to that previous slide where you had the core project and where you had the client libraries. This is just one of the client UIs at the moment. So we then take first view, and first view is very simple as well, and we'll just add it as Android again. And all it's doing is it's creating just like any activity, and in the onCreate method, we're setting the content view. So that's it, really, for C# code in our client at the moment. We then need to look at the AXML, just like if you were writing a Windows UI, you'd look at the XAML. So let's take a look at what's in the AXML. And what we get is we discover in the layout, we've added a splash screen, which is going to be very dull. It's just going to say loading. And actually, I'll just make the text a bit bigger for you. For those of you who aren't familiar and didn't come to the training, Android XML is a very simple sort of XML format, a bit like XAML, a bit less verbose. Things like linear layout that you can possibly see over here, that's just a stack panel for you Windows developers. And a text view is just like a text block. So it's just simple properties you set on these so you can display them. Let's set that up as 40dp. And then let's look at our first view. So does anyone remember what the property was called in our first view? I think it was called name. Yeah. So we'll see in our first view that we've got a linear layout, and inside it we're just going to put a text view. But let's just change that slightly. So I'll just zoom in for you. What we want to do first of all is we do have to change this manifest name to, so this is just declaring like a CLR import if you're a XAML developer. And this is evolved demo.android. And what we're going to do is we've got one text view here, but we'd like to have a text view and an edit text. So a text view is like a label or a text block, and an edit text is like a text box or a UI text field. And we'll just bind both of those to that field, which was name. Yeah. So now we've done that, we should actually be able to build this project. And unless I've forgotten a step, which I don't think I have, or I missed a namespace, hopefully that builds. Let's find out what I missed. Build succeeded. So let's now try and run this on a emulator. So I've got the Intel emulator installed here somewhere. That should start up quite quickly, the Intel emulator. If you are doing Android development, then you definitely need the Intel emulator because it's far too slow on the x86, the non-accelerated one. So hopefully that's starting up, please. If not, I'll switch to a device. OK, so that started up. That's a Android emulator I started up. And now we should be able to go back here, and it doesn't refresh properly at the moment. That's a slight bug in the version I've got of the Visual Studio plugin. But you just do it again and it comes through. So hopefully now that will start up. It's packaging the application. It's saying it's deploying some assemblies. So we'll get that loading screen. It's not very exciting. And then we get this. And if we start typing in here, hopefully you will see that we get it replicated at the top. So that's data binding in action, two-way data binding. Yeah? Did you all follow that, or was it all? Yeah? So, thank you. But I know that that's like really dummy and really not exciting to you. So what I want to do, and we are a bit strapped for time, so I'm going to go as fast as I can. Oh, hey, Jonas. Congratulations. Sorry, the guys from Less Painful I've worked with for 2 years, so I'm delighted by the news. And it's really epic. Thank you, guys. What we want to do now is we want to actually add something a bit more exciting. So I'm going to add a button to this guy. And again, we'll just add some simple text to this. But I want to go to a second screen, and I want to do something more exciting on that second screen because, you know, a text that's replicated isn't so exciting to anyone. So we'll add just a Go label to it, and then we'll add a local binding. You'll discover that, you know, lots of the stuff in MvvmCross starts with the letters MVX, and it's kind of called Smurf naming because everything is like Papa Smurf, Baby Smurf, etc. I apologize for it, but it does actually help with IntelliSense quite often, so that's why it stayed in. What we're going to do is we're going to bind the click event on this button, and we're going to bind it to a Go command. Yeah. So you don't get IntelliSense with these, just like you didn't used to in Visual Studio with XML, or with XAML, but it's pretty straightforward. You can see how that's all tied together. So we've put that together as a button, but what we need to do is mirror that in the core project. So in the core project, we will go back to the first view model, and we need to add that Go command. So let's just add it. I'm running, so I can't add it. OK, let's come out of the debugger. So if we add an I command, and I hope, you know, an I command for those of you who aren't familiar with it is just a simple binding for is a simple action, if you like. It's a delegate type thing. So what we'll do is I'll add this Go command. And when you get it, we will just always return an MVX command. And that MVX command will always tell you that you just have to go to a second view model. So we'll just do show view model, second view model. And that's all you have to do. Obviously, we don't have a second view model at the moment, so let's create one. And to create a new view model, all you have to do is declare it, and you have to inherit from MVX view model. And that's a view model created. Now, what sort of thing do you want in your, oops, there's a typo there. Please, by all means, do the ultimate pair programming and type out, shout out, there's a bug. What sort of things do you want in your view models? Well, quite often what you want in your view models is things like SQLite data. So what we've got is we've got a wrapper in MVX around SQLite, the SQLite net wrapper from Frank. And so what we do is we go back to the NuGet and we take a look. Oh, we've got network now. And we just look and we think, right, well, we'll use the SQLite plugin. And we go and install it, and that brings in an extra assembly into our core project. So hopefully here in the references, you can see here. Oh, I've added it to the wrong project, sorry. I will add it to the core. We will need to add it to the UI as well, so I've done that out of sync. But we just add it to the core. So this is the portable class library added to a portable class library. And what you'll see we've done, if you look in, is you've just added in this plugin. And what that plugin allows you to do is it allows you to access SQLite. So let's just add that. And let's hold a folder called Services. And I'm not going to code all of this live, because I would definitely finish sometime after dinner tonight. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a new class. And I'll just call it class 1 and then let it resharper. And I do have a pre-canned demo here, so hopefully this will work for me. Kittens? Yes. So what we've got is, and I will talk you through it as quickly as I can. At the top, we've got a class called Kitten, because you can't really have a demo without a kitten. You could have it with zombies, but these are all pirates. But kittens is by far the most popular. We've got a class, we've got an interface called Kitten Genesis service, which is just going to create kittens for us. We've got this implementation of Kitten Genesis service, and you can see it's just got some random stuff in it. And this is actually, I found a website with the top 20 cat names, so those are the top 20 cat names. And we've then got some random code here, if I can find it, just to give us something interesting for a price and for other information on the kitten. And you'll notice we never knew this guy, yeah? So all it's done is it's declared it as a kitten Genesis service, and it inherits from this. But that little IOC code, again, Greg Shackle's code talk later today, we'll talk more about this. But that IOC boot will just find it, and it will use reflection. It'll say, when we find one of those, we'll create a singleton of it. You don't have to have a singleton. You can have a dynamic each time, but for this demo, it's a singleton. And what we do is we then also have a data service. And this is where we start into SQLite. And again, what we've done is I've just created a really simple little method called kittens matching. So we're going to look for kittens that have this little filter in there. And I've created an implementation of that. So hopefully I can make this a bit bigger for you. And what we've got is we've got a data service that takes two interfaces as construction. And what that means is, again, this inversion of control magic will fill those implementations in for us later. We've got one which is an iSQLite connection factory. You haven't seen that, but what I can tell you is it comes from that SQLite Net plugin. Yeah? And all it's really got on it is a method, is a create. And it allows you to create a SQLite database. And the other thing is we've got this kitten Genesis service. So in this constructor, what we do is we ask the factory to create us a database called one.sql. On that database, we create a table, yeah, which is going to be the kitten table. So it's all ORM stuff. You don't need to know any SQL. We stay lovely within C#. And then if we don't have any data, then we do actually seed it with some random kittens, because, again, everyone loves random kittens. And then we've got our method for actually finding the kittens. And I apologize I didn't code this live, because it doesn't take much longer to code live. It's just I do typos and things. So. But you can see, hopefully, that when we have this kittens matching coming in, what you're going to get is you're going to get a table of kittens. You're going to do an order by ascending price. You're going to do the where the name contains filter, and the to list. And the magic behind the scenes here is all in standard SQLite.net. Wherever Frank is, he knows I'm stalking him. You know, that's it. That's your SQL. And if you need to do inserts and you need to do updates, those are also all available for you. So that's our service. Hopefully that you could follow that through. But what we want to do is we want to use that in our second view model. So here is our second view model. We move it to another file so it's a bit cleaner. And what we're going to do is when we construct our view model, so let's create a constructor, we would like to have that data service. So let's add an iData service and add the reference. And let's call it data service because I'm a bit OCD about my names. And what we'll do is we'll have a private member as well that's an iData service. So we'll just have that. And normally I'd be more OCD than that, and I'd insist on having read-only as well. So I'd have data service set to data service. And then let's call an update when we first get in there, because we want to display something in our list. So that's our constructor done. But we need some properties. So what properties should we have? Let's have a filter. And I'll use my shortcuts, because I do like my shortcuts. So the filter is going to be called filter, and it's going to be filter. And then let's also, when that gets set, let's also call update, because, you know, the filters change. We want to change these things and push them through. And hopefully you can see that, sorry. It's done it on a separate line. And then we need to have a list of kittens. So let's do another property, which is going to be our list of kittens. And hopefully, again, all of you guys who are used to MVVM, this will be all familiar to you. And it's nothing about UI controls, and it's all about testable code that's in your view models. So we're going to have a list of kittens. And I think I'm going to have to ignore that prompt, otherwise it'll upset my thing. So we're going to have kittens, and we'll call it kittens. And then after I've renamed everything, then I can say, please include system.generics.collections. So that's our kittens done. So the only thing we haven't done is our update. So let's let ReSharper generate us an update. And what do we want to do in update? Well, I think we just said that in update, what we'd really like to do is we'd like to go to our data service, and we would like to say kittens matching, and we're going to pass in our filter, because that's the filter. And what we're going to do is we're going to return the result to kittens. Yeah, so does everyone follow what the flow is of the app there and how it works? I think it's reasonably straightforward. So what do we now do is that should hopefully build as a core. Let's find out. Yeah, it says build succeeded. So let's go back to our UI. And we've only got a first view at the moment. So let's add a second one. And we'll do that using our favorite tool of cut and paste. And, oops, and I managed to do it wrong, so it's not my favorite tool. And we will just change the name. That's all we're doing. So you'll notice something called convention over configuration here. All we're doing is just, it's named the same, therefore it will load. And what we'll then do is that's finished. That's our C# done for the view. Yeah, I hope that's not too complicated for anyone. Hope, you know, it is Android activity stuff. You'll see that if you're used to Android activities, you'll see that instead of inheriting from an activity, we're inheriting from an MVX activity. And what that does is add various goblins and pixies into the mix, which will do the data binding for us. There is a more technical explanation, but I've forgotten it. So, and then what we're going to do is back in the layout here. So hopefully you can see in the layout, I've just copied first view because I'm going to use it as a template. And then I'm going to take first view and I'm going to call it second view so that it's got the right name. Quite often you'll discover I use like page underscore or view underscore instead, just so they're grouped in this one folder. Because one of the things that does annoy me about Android is it's a real flat folder thing. So when you get to a big project, and I'll show you some big projects later, you've got thousands of these things in there and it's a bit annoying. And so just grouping them by view underscore helps quite a lot. So that was second view. And what we need to do is edit that XML, obviously. You'll notice that I tend to use the Visual Studio Editor rather than the Xamarin one. That's because I know what I'm doing. And because I'm old school, I don't know. And it's because I like IntelliSense, and I get that with that at the moment. But you will quite often find, if you ever work with me, unfortunately for you, you will find that I switch back to the designer quite often just to test, does it look right? So, you know, there's nothing wrong with the designer, it's just the way I've been brought up wrong or whatever. So in this view, what do we want? We know at the top we'd like to have a text box that's the filter, and then underneath it we'd like to have the list of kittens. Does that sound reasonable to people? Yeah? So what we'll do is we'll change this, and so we've got a text view, but actually we want edit text at the top. And what was the name of the property? Was it filter I used? Good feedback, okay. Hopefully it was filter. And then underneath that we say we want a list. So a list is, in standard Android, what you'd use is a list view. But list view doesn't know about data binding because list view is MVC and it needs an adapter, which is about this many lines of code, and then you need to do stuff. So we're not going to use that. We're going to use an MVX list view, and to do that, we just type mvx.mvx list view, and that's it. And then what we're going to do is we're going to change its layout slightly. So let's change its layout. It's going to be a fill parent. And what we're going to bind, so anybody who's done data binding in Windows will know that every list has an item source on it. And I seem to remember that our list in the view model was called kittens, so that's what it's going to be. And that's what it's going to do. And then how do you do the template? How do you say what it's going to look like? Well, for that, there's another little local attribute that we're going to use. And this is going to be MVX item template. So if you ignore the MVX at the start, I'm sure you can read what that says. And this is a bit strange because it's Android syntax, but basically we're going to call it layout/item kitten. Yeah? And obviously we haven't got that at the moment, so we're going to save this file, which I just have, and then let's create an item kitten. So we're going to create an item kitten. And so what are we going to have in our item kitten? Well, let's do a stack panel again. Yeah, obviously, given more time, you design this slightly more beautifully. And I think kittens do have a name, so that's good. And I think the kittens do have a price, I think we said. Yeah, and we want to see that they are ordered in price, so it's good to have this. And then I think we also said that they have an image. So let's just add the image. At the moment, I'm just going to display the image as a bit of text, because that's just how we're going to boot it. And then I'll show you how we can add that so it's actually displaying an image, as long as the internet is on my side. And what we'll do is we'll run this guy up. Does it build? Did I make any mistakes? Anybody spot them? So build succeeded, and it's modified a designer file for me. And then what we'll do is, just so I don't have to keep finding this, I'm going to set it as a startup. So function F5, hopefully it'll go off. Hopefully I've remembered which emulator it's going to run on. So we go across to our emulator. We've still got our first view, I hope. We've still got our loading view, I hope. So it loads. You know, it's a bit snappy. I don't know if that meets the 36 milliseconds or not. Apologies if it doesn't. And then we've still got our data binding here. So hopefully, if I can find the thing. So we've still got data binding here. You can see it's working fine. If we hit go, we hit a bug. What did I type wrong? So we've got second view. And it's telling us that we've got a problem with index of. So our bug is, did anyone spot the bug? Oh, you're not following fast enough. Right. So the bug is that when we created our second view model, yeah, we never actually set a value for filter to start with. So that then went through to the SQLite, and it came through, and it was a horrible exception because it came through as a null reference example on the contains method. So apologies for that. Let's set one.
And we will set it to Fluffy, which must be a kitten's name, surely. And we'll rebuild, and we will discover that Fluffy isn't a kitten's name. It's a dog's name. I don't know, you're Americans, you probably don't know, yeah? No, I won't go there. No, okay, there's a great Harry Enfield thing where, called The Slobs, Wayne and Waynetta, and they have an argument about how to name their children, and they want to call their children Ashtray, but you can't call your children Ashtray because that's a girl's name, so anyway, sorry. Right, back here still, hopefully this all works, tread, yay, so you can see it works. Hopefully we can now go here, and Fluffy wasn't a name, so let's just take that, and if only I could have the keyboard support. And you can see that if I remove that, then hopefully we get, this list has appeared. And if I get rid of the keyboard, I'm not sure how this is displaying on the screen up there. But you can see these are our things, and you can see that they are ordered in price order, the 3s, the 4s, the 5s. Yeah, so it's done all of that for us. And you can see everything's there. And just to prove that we're still filtering, if we go here and we type a capital C, then you'll see that only Comet, Custo, and... Oh, no, it's only Comet, Custo, and Casanova are left. And it's also a contains exactly as you expected, so, if we delete that and we go back to let's have an O, who's got it? So Polly's got it, Casanova's got it. So that filter's working exactly as you expected, and you see how much UI-specific code you've written. It's just been that XML, and that's the way it's there. But these images, these place kitten images are a bit ugly, so let's see if we can add those in as well. So what to do that we do is with a couple more plugins you need. And it's because Android, unlike Windows, doesn't provide you with default image downloading. And so what we do is we just add in a couple of references, a couple of NuGet packages. And these ones are going to be the file plugin, because we need to store files on disk for the download images. And it's the download cache image plugin. And once we've downloaded those and added them in, and you'll see them, they're just references. Although there's a secret little file here in the Bootstrap, which tells it, make sure it's loaded. But again, it's done by convention. Because it's in the Bootstrap folder, it boots it. Yeah, so it's just something that runs when it gets started. And what you can see now, hopefully, is that what I can do is, in my item kitten view, instead of this text view at the bottom, let's add an image view. And what we'll do is, for height on this, we'll set it to, well, I don't know, 40 dp or something again, dp. And instead of binding the text property on the image view, we will bind the image URL property. And hopefully, again, I haven't messed up, and hopefully we can run this. And it's still going to say Fluffy, so you're not going to see anything to start with. And it's packaging the application, it's going across to the emulator, and... So we can load this up, and hopefully you can see that this data binding still works, yep. And if you go to the second field, we get Fluffy, but we don't have a Fluffy, so let's pull it down. Instead, we have this, and hopefully you can see we've now got kitten pictures as well. So, and everything's still working, everything's still there in terms of how we're building this together. And you'd obviously do nicer layout than this, and you'd obviously have much bigger kittens than that, because you can't survive with small kittens. And that is a brief introduction to how to do one platform. I'm not sure how I'm doing time-wise, so I'm just going to speed up a little bit. If you wanted then to take this Android project and you wanted to replicate it across different platforms, then what you would do is you would add, a new, let's say it's an iOS project. Let's start with the Windows project, because we still need to support the old school of Windows. So maybe it's a Windows Store project. And you would just add it in, evolve demo.store. And you would add it in, and then when you've added it in, you'd go through exactly similar steps of going to NuGet, finding out the starter pack, adding it in, adding the SQLite in, and you'll discover that it adds similar type things each time, and that it works each time with providing views. So just because we don't have that long, I'm going to go to something which I created yesterday while I was sitting on the floor. And that's a pre-canned one. And in this pre-canned one, I'll leave that saved. It's exactly the same demo, so I just checked it worked before I stood in front of you. And we'll discover that there's one slight area where I've been slightly misleading you so far. And that's with monotouch, with Xamarin.iOS. And because Xamarin.iOS doesn't support portable class libraries quite so well at the moment. It's coming. It's due any day now, any week now. It's almost there. But for now, what we have to do is something which obviously burns my heart. We have to do something called file linking, which means that you copy all of the information across from the evolve.core into a monotouch-specific library. Yeah. You can actually do it another way, and in my main project, what I'll do, but for demo, I won't do it here. For my main project, what I'll do is I'll actually just switch in the references, because all that's changing differently is what you're linking against. You're not linking against true portable class libraries, you're linking against monotouch versions of them. But for now, for demo, I've actually just duplicated them. And let me just show you what the views look like in monotouch. You don't need to see the views in Windows Phone or Windows Store, do you? Everybody's happy with the way those work, and there's plenty of things about XAML binding. You don't need that. But if you take a look at evolved.touch, which is the monotouch one, then what we've done again is we've just added in exactly the same sort of NuGet packages to get this working. And you'll discover that just as we have with Android, we've got a setup. And just as with Android, it's just got a funny, native-looking constructor, which takes an application delegate, and then it creates the core app. And just as with Android, we've got these bootstrap things that have come from our plugins. So the same sort of plugins that have come in. And the views, we don't have an iOS designer that's quite as nice at the moment. So the views that we're doing at the moment are constructed in code. You can construct them from zibs. It's not too difficult to do. And I do quite most of my views really in zibs. But here all I've done is I've created, just as we had an MVX activity, here, just to show you there's nothing else going on, this is a first view, so again, it's using naming conventions. And instead of having a UI view controller base, it's got an MVX view controller base. And then we just set up the UI. So within my view controller, I've got a universal view that's just a white background. And then I've got label 1, and I've positioned it, text box 1, and positioned it, a button, and I've set its frame and set its title. And then we add the data binding. Now, there are several ways to do data binding in Touch. But the way that I tend to do at the moment is this kind of link syntax, which I fully have kind of borrowed from Reactive UI, where they've done it as well. They've done it across all platforms. And so this binding, if you take a look at it, so this is our first view, which just had the label and the text box. And it's just saying, please bind my label to my name. And it's just guessing what the default property is for a label. Guess what the default property is? It's text. And it's also saying, please bind my text box to my name. And then the bottom line is, please bind my button, and its default property is going to be the click event or the touched up inside event. And it's saying, bind that to the go command. Yeah. Now, I don't know if I'm going to get this working across the network. Let me just try. But I should just have a go. It's not been particularly happy. I've never tested Xamarin.ios before on a network that has quite so many. Well, OK. I can't quite connect across the network at the moment, so I'm not going to try that. All right, we'll let the simulator start. Normally, in my home office, where I don't have all these different things on this hotel network with its password, this will just run from debugger, and it just kind of sits there in the background. Right, we don't actually need to go to the daily dilbert, although you might be interested to know what the daily dilbert is for today. This is another sample that ships. It's a similar type list thing, and it's the daily dilbert. But what we're trying to show is kittens, because we all like kittens. So if we come down to here, and here's the demo that I created yesterday, and it was running. So this is actually with a red background. Sorry, I didn't update it. And if we find here, then we can find our text, and hopefully you can see the binding is working across the two things. And that's just the binding that is on this screen over here. And if we hit the Go button, which hasn't got the rounded rect in this version, then we go across to this. And this didn't have fluffy, this had string. But hopefully you'll find out that we get all of these kittens back. And if the network is on my side, maybe this isn't connected to the network. Maybe that's why I can't see it. If we were lucky enough to have oh no, here come the kittens, then you can see it binds to those as well and pulls them back. So you can see that, hopefully, that's the way that's put together. And hopefully you can see that, it's not much code to do a table view, which is connected to SQLite, which updates according to a filter. Done. And also you've seen the navigation from one to another. Right. So at this point, I could show you a few more demos, and I could build it out further. There's an awful lot more plugins you can use. It's not just SQLite. There's things like accelerometer. There's things like location, which is easy to add and easy to build in. So thank you for sitting through the live demo. I hope you didn't mind too much that I demoed it live. So hero number one is Don Box, and he's the guy who first introduced me to C#. I don't see much of him anymore in the evangelist things, but it was also an opportunity to put King of Com up on the screen. So
some of the principles that we've seen working, and you've hopefully seen in that demo, is portable class libraries. I've been using them now for a year, so this diagram is a year old. And it just enables you to shrink your code base down so you don't have all these linked files and projects. It enables you also, because they are portable profiles, it enables you to make sure that your code won't break when you go to other platforms. There are downsides to using them as well, which is a reduced API set, and they're a bit fiddly sometimes. But if you are working in a big team, and multiple people are attacking the same project, then when you have that structure on the left, you discover that it's quite a lot of grief that you get trying to maintain all of those things in separate sync. We also, hopefully, you saw inversion of control. And inversion of control, the message really is really simple. It's interface-driven development, and it just wires things up for you. If ever you think it's too slow and you want to wire things up yourself, you can obviously override it. You don't have to use it. But it's easier to use it than not. And all the things you saw, like the plugins, they were just using it underneath the thing. You didn't have to write any code, which really comes on to configuration. Convention over configuration. And that really is just saying that, if you've got something called a home view model, then do I really have to write the code that says, it's a home view that goes with it? So it just tries to link them up. And we do the same sort of thing in things like value converters. So if you ever declare a time ago value converter, then what you'll discover is it appears for binding as time ago. So, you can just use it, and it's very straightforward to use. Ticky, icky. So this is really quite an important message, because sometimes people think I'm quite a zealot, and I'm saying, you must do data binding this way. You cannot have code behind. It's not true. The main important thing is that your app is the king, is the king. So whatever happens, make sure you can ship your app. So, if you need lots of code behind, or if you need to import something that's not a portable class library, go ahead and do it. You know what your customers need. You know what you want to deploy. So that's really the message, and it's really quite key. Make sure that you can ship. More heroes? OK, this is a bit of a lecture, this hero, but it's all right. These are genuinely my heroes. These are Young Rewired State. Every year they do a hackathon in the UK. The outstanding fact about these guys, apart from the fact they're all really talented engineers, is they're 70% female. Looking around the room today, we're not quite 70% female. So, they are talented engineers. They are enthusiastic engineers. They are the sort of people you would like to work with. And I have no idea how we fix it, but we are broken. So sorry for the lecture, but yeah, something has to change on those. Where are we? The app is king. So just to show you some projects that have launched on MvvmCross, we started way back this project on Star Wars Kinect. That's the reason we started. You're not going to hear the music, sorry. So Star Wars Kinect was a, let me mute it if I can. Star Wars Kinect was a scrolling Twitter app, so you just got the effect of that to promote a Star Wars game. And we needed it across iPhone and Android and Windows Phone. And so that's why we started this project. We were Windows first. We were C# devs with XAML. We knew nothing really about iOS and Android. And it's the way we wanted to tackle the project. I'm really grateful to the guys at Microsoft and to the guys at LucasArts and the guys at McCann London who run this project, that they allowed us to open source MvvmCross as a result of it. So good stuff. Noise Sentinel. So those of you who've been on the Xamarin forums may have met a guy called Cheese Baron, who's an excellent engineer, particularly comes up with a lot of Android answers. He works for Bruel and Kajer in Denmark. These guys have this Silverlight app, and they are world leaders in kind of noise and environmental vibration monitoring. So they'll put sensors around airports, they'll put sensors around motorways, they'll put sensors around factories. They have to do weather info as well to get the wind direction for the noise. And they've built this wonderful Silverlight app. And as everyone knows, Silverlight isn't quite the platform for the future. And also, they had this challenge that all of their users were on iPhones, and they wanted to see the data on iPhones. They wanted to pull back these audio samples on iPhones. So what they did was they took all their ViewModel code from their existing Silverlight app, and they ported it across to iPhone, Android, and to Windows Phone. And they didn't just show maps of where things were, but they also showed these color charts, which is a custom-drawn control. And they showed charts, and they allow you to play back the audio. It's a really impressive sort of business-to-business industrial application they put together. And I can also honestly say that I don't think I've ever been asked a technical question by these guys about how do we do it. They just go off and build. So, it's really good. I'm really impressed with these screenshots. I only saw them myself for the first time a few weeks ago. And they've just gone off and built it. CentraStage are a UK company, also in South Africa as well. And what they have is an asset management system. So if you are a large government building or a large government organization and you've got lots of computers you want to track, or you're a school or whatever, then you install an agent on each of those, and then you can remote desktop into them, and you can run registry scripts, you can find out what CPU is running, you can help users. And they wanted to port from their web interface and their desktop interface to iPhone, because all of their users, again, had iPhones. So they didn't have MvvM code, but what they did was they built some. And that's what they came up with. And it's, it's a lovely looking app. It's fluid, it's fast. It allows the users to access the same information, the same web services on the road. And what is particularly impressive about these guys is they just did it for one platform. They weren't interested in cross-platform at all. But since then, they've also ported to Android. And they've also now ported to Mac desktop. And they're the only guys who've done that for MvvmCross so far. So they've taken the same ViewModels and they ported it across to Mac desktop. And this is now their route forwards, and they will also port to Windows desktop, and it's very impressive. And just as an added bonus, they're contributing back to open source, so really love that. Aviva Drive, I can play the video without it. So these guys were quite an early user as well. Aviva, for those of you who don't know, is a very large European insurer. And as large European insurers, they don't like risks. They have lots of actuaries who say, well, we can't run our code that way. Everything has to be tested. Everything has to be built to a high standard. So what they've built is they built an app that users can download, and you have to drive 200 miles. And while you're driving 200 miles, it monitors your location, and it says how good a driver you are. So it does things like it does braking and monitoring, and it gives you badges if you've braked very smoothly. If you've hit something, I don't know if it detects. And then you can share that information, and then you can get money off of your insurance. And it's available on Google and Android. And for them, it's a very useful app because it gives them more information about the users. It gives them more connectivity to their users. I don't know how realistic it is in terms of that, but obviously in terms of testing these algorithms, which continually sample location and user, it was really useful to have that code shared in C#. The final one I'll talk about is, I've been involved with a little bit. I did 2 weeks on this project back in January. And this was a project for a rugby tour. For those of you who don't know what rugby is, it's like American football for men. And sorry. And women as well, actually. I know, anyway, but this is a huge tour. It's very commercial, actually. I probably shouldn't say it on video. It's very commercial because it goes via Hong Kong on the way, and it's a lot of banking, it's a lot of public school boys. They needed to put this out on Windows because one of the primary sponsors was Microsoft. So they needed to put this together, and there are a few guys in Cardiff called Sequence as an agency. And they come from a Windows background. They know all about XAML. They can make really beautiful, slick UIs, as you can see. But they also needed it on Windows Phone, so they ported it to Windows Phone. And they also needed it on iPhone and Android. And sorry, this doesn't fit. If it's lovely on my screen. And you can see that there's also kind of the competition of on the plane on there. There's a lot of information. There's kind of a news blog that gets updated. So behind the scenes, what they're actually doing is they actually only have about 7 or 8 ViewModels, like top-level pages. But they are using Umbraco as a CMS. Yeah? And that talks using Entity Framework to SQL. And then they have Web API as a custom JSON. And that is C# code, so it's stuff that every engineer in their team can work at. They then share all the data transfer objects in a PCL. So there's nothing that isn't C# and isn't shared. And they share that to the core logic, which is the ViewModels, and it has a local SQLite database. They use SQLite.net for that database, so it's C# again. There's nothing else in there. And then they build the 4 UIs, or actually it's about 7 UIs, because they've got tablet versions as well for all of these. And as a flow, end to end, and the project so far, it did literally start sort of second week of January, and it's launched, it's out there. There are more updates coming, because when the tour actually starts, there'll be scores live, there'll be all those sorts of features, there'll be more competitions. But you can see how it's there. They're also using Windows Azure Media Services for transcoding video, because each platform needs its own video stream. And it's really impressive. It's a wonderful architecture. And a bunch of 3 C# engineers managed to put it all together and deliver it in 2 months from not knowing Android and iOS. So apologies for lecturing on. Apologies for going. So the future. Hopefully I've shown you where we are today. There's still a few things to finish in the current hot tuner release. Before I go any further, this is a community project. I do spend far too much time on it, but there are an awful lot of people who've also contributed. These are just the guys who've contributed this year, and we give them a badge of awesomeness. It's a virtual badge, still makes them feel awesome. And yeah, it's a huge thank you to all these guys who've contributed stuff back, including the Microsoft employee who's anonymous at the bottom right and pixelated. He does a heck of a lot for us. Thank you, Daniel. Anonymous. And just to tell you what the future might look like. So we started November 2011. The first version was all about just getting iNotify property changed and just getting an app out the door. Version 2 was kind of that Twitter diagram you saw of turning into portable class libraries. Version 3 that we're on now has really cleaned things up. So you've seen how clean the views are. Yeah, you've seen that there's no horrible code in there. The names still have MVX on the front, but they're a lot shorter than they were. And we've really brought the number of namespaces down so that even people without ReSharper can use it. And we're hoping to get .Mac out as soon as PCL support is in there. So that's version 3. And the future, what we're really looking to do, and again, sorry it doesn't fit on the giant screen, I'm not looking to do a version 4. I'm looking to kind of do smaller iterations from there and add more plugins in to explore things like async, because you haven't seen any async today, so we don't really have much async support. There are probably people in the room who have used it with async. There's somebody who's been in touch with it recently. But just to explore things like patterns and how we can change MvvM itself, because MvvM has stayed pretty stationary since sort of 2005. Things like reactive have come along. But are there other ways that we could kind of grow the framework, particularly now that we're in control of the binding layer and we're not reliant on Microsoft to do a huge release every 3 years or whatever? So that's the future. It depends on what people use it. It's 100% MSPL open source, so it's there for you to change as well. And all those guys in the previous slide are also contributing to it. What's this one going to say? Oh, yeah, OK, so I probably have overrun. There'll be some time for questions, I hope. But it is a chance for you to eat lunch any time now. Hopefully, you've seen a kind of evolution from MVC to MVVM. Oh, someone really wants lunch. They're going to miss the best bits. Hopefully, you've seen that go to MVX. Hopefully, you've seen how to write. Oh, have I got that long? Excellent. We've got some more demos coming. Right. OK, so hopefully, you've seen an MvvmCross hands-on, and I can do some more of that. We've got, I showed you some of the stuff about PCL and about IOC and all that. You've seen some real-world apps, and you've seen some talk about the future. Right, we've got more time. If you'd like to know more and you're in London, there is an event where you can do more. But we've got more time. So you probably saw that last year we did a project with Spheros, and you've probably seen those played with. And there will be later on, I will hack, because I've got 3 Spheros, and there's loads out there. But what we've also done is we've also ported to support helicopters, so we may do some of that as well. And it's really talking about the fact that you can do an awful lot more with your line of business apps, and you can extend to things which are really native, like Bluetooth. But let me just show you some of the other apps, seeing as I've got, I think, an extra 10 minutes. Oh, I never expected that. So let me go back to Visual Studio. And with my extra time, I will overrun. Actually, was there a question? Sorry, just a...
How are you doing async stuff now?
How am I doing?
Async stuff now.
I can't hear you, sorry.
How are you doing async stuff now?
So async stuff at the moment, for like Windows RT, we generally wrap it and put it, so we can't call tasks directly if you're going across to iOS and Android. It's very close to being able to do that. But right now, we tend to put it into a plugin so that it's called separately, and then it just comes back via a delegate when it's finished into the ViewModel. However, as you know, the alphas are out for Android and for iOS, and that support for full async. Perhaps it was announced this morning. I'm not sure whether that was a beta announcement or a full announcement. Once that's available, then we'll be able to ship it properly within the framework, and you'll be able to use async just like you do within MvvM Lite ViewModels. I mean, the problem async is kind of orthogonal to MvvM. Yeah, but as soon as you add async, it kind of affects your whole chain of calls, so you need to write it. But it doesn't stop, like those Umbrico guys, they were writing all the way from top to bottom without any worries. Yeah, on Windows RT. So let me just see what I can open up. So I talked about value converters, and I will show you a value converter project.
can see there's an awful lot of MVX projects around. So value converters, if you're interested in using those in binding. We've got this as a sample, and this in the core has a set of value view models, which are colors, dates, there's a home, which is the menu, there's a strings view model, and there's a two-way. And inside there, we've also got the converters folder, and the converters, actually, I don't think they're in there. The converters has a set of converters in there, so you can see them here. So we've got a two-way converter, which is going to do a mathematics square. Yeah. We've got a string length converter that does the length of a string. We've got some color converters that do portable color, because as those of you who've even tried in Windows, color isn't portable across Windows Phone and Windows RT and WPF even. It's in different namespaces. We then have a reverse converter. We have this time ago converter for dates. And if we run this up, hopefully in Droid, what you'll see is in the binding for this, just to use them, all we do is we use them as, where you have your binding, then hopefully you will see that we just include a converter equals and the name of the converter. So it's a bit like having your static resource converter in XAML. And this enables you to really straightforwardly run up. Hopefully it builds across. Packaging application, copying application device. So what you should be able to see is, again, there's nothing in the code behind for the activities. So you should be able to see that, in the color converter, then we have these sliders, which are red, green, and blue. And hopefully on that big screen, you can see that as we change the color sliders, all the binding happens. So that was color there. That was seek bars. So there's the green seek bar, etc. And you can see how straightforward it is to use those. If we then go back to here and we look at something like the date one, which is time ago, then you can see those lines which say how long ago each of those dates is, and they're just done using a simple converter. And you can see, hopefully, also that we have a visibility converter, and this is cross-platform. Yeah. Another demo that I actually had on the screen at the start is we've got Intel produced a good infographic recently about what happens on the internet. So since I've started talking today, there have been 1,455 victims of identity theft. If you take a look at Amazon, have made $6 million worth of sales since I started talking. If you look at some of the scary numbers, sorry, this doesn't come across contrast very well on the screen. The number of Google searches is all of those. And the code for this, again, is just a straightforward list, and we can show that. And each of these is just available as normal in Visual Studio. Is enabled on each platform. So let me find it. Open solution. So the code for that is very simple. For those of you who are used to using MvvM Lite and used to using a messenger, messengers are really, really good patterns to get into. And so we have a plugin that contains a messenger, and actually it's code stolen from that gentleman on the front row wearing an orange shirt. Thank you, Jonathan. It's stolen from an explat. It's borrowed. It's based on it. That's what our plugin is for the messenger. And what it enables us to do is we actually set up a service that is a tick service. And what it does is it sits there as a singleton all the time, and it just once a second fires off an update, which anybody can listen to. And what we do in the view model for this guy, across all the platforms, because you can see we've got Droid, we've got Phone, we've got Windows Store, and we've got Touch, is we just listen to it, and we just have an update method on every single one that once a second works out how many more to add on. So that's, again, the same type of architecture. I can also show you. I showed you the daily Dilbert running it briefly. Another really nice demo that shows how much you can put into portable class libraries and in the core there is if you are quite mathematical, then what I quickly did was I put together a Mandelbrot generator. So there's quite a lot of code in there, but it's not too bad, trust me. Yeah, and you can't quite see it, can you, because it's off the screen. So there's quite a lot of code about how you're going to do your Mandelbrot generator, but actually the algorithm for Mandelbrot is really small. And what we do is we run it up, and on every platform, it will just show you the Mandelbrot. So let me show it running on Store again.
So hopefully you can see what it'll do is, so every 5 seconds it'll generate a new one. And that's being generated in real time across the screen. And hopefully I can run the same thing over on Mac. So what you'll see is you'll see exactly the same code running. And what's actually being bound here to the UI, as well as those controls, the auto switches, etc., what's being bound is a byte array that is being converted to a UI image or to an Android image or whatever at runtime. And it produces quite pretty things. And you also, when you play with it on different devices, you get a real good idea of how good each of them is at maths. So, yeah. OK, what I think I need to do is just to finish off the slide deck. And then if there are any questions, I can take them. One final mega hero. This is Nicola. You've listened to me for an hour. She's put up with me 21 years. So yeah, thank you very much, Nicola. Thank you for listening, everybody. Thank you to Xamarin for inviting me over and for Evolve and for building the platforms. It's been very humbling listening to people talk about use MvvmCross. Thank you very much, guys. I'm Stuart, and hopefully you've got something out of today.